Somebody got that. Okay. Well, another week without Mark. So Mark's doing a series. A lot of you know over evangelism over this quarter, and it's been an excellent study so far. A lot of good discussions. I know that's an intent of his, is to get everybody's personal stories, personal input. This is a subject that we learn from one another because everybody has unique experiences. And so that'll be the case tonight. I'll expect to hear from lots of you. If you have thoughts, please do bring them up. If this is the first sign of how the formatting is going to go, we'll see. So that block didn't come out the way I intended, but you still get the idea. So tonight we're talking about faith over fear. So it's kind of a time of pause, maybe, a time of regrouping our thoughts, reflecting a little bit, but also a time of motivation. So following tonight, we're going to get pretty practical, I think, from that point on in terms of interacting with people, sharing your faith. Tonight we'll talk on that subject for sure, but with this lesson, there's a lot of different ways I can approach it. Faith and fear are everywhere in the Bible, aren't they? So, for starters, get my handy clicker out here. Maybe. Let's just get a baseline here. Yeah, this format. Sorry about the format. You can still see everything, so that's good. If you were to go just look on the internet, as most do these days, you'd see this show up, something of this nature. It's a feeling of anxiety concerning the outcome of something or the safety and well-being of someone. This feeling of anxiety. I don't know if anybody's relates with that. How about the second one? Avoid or put off doing something because one is afraid. I doubt anybody in here has done that before. Definitely relatable. Is everybody good with our baseline off the internet definitions of fear, or when you saw that word, did something else come to mind? Okay, keep that thought going. You might also think of quotes you've heard. Famous people. You may even hear the voices as you read these quotes. So FDR is a famous one. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Anybody remember when that was from? I heard a month and a day. Oh, all right. Okay. Huh? So FDR, in a time of just economic turmoil, everybody is wondering what's going to happen the next day. And he addresses that with this statement. Powerful statement, continues to be said. How about William Shakespeare? I've got one for everybody in here. We've got a political one. We've got William Shakespeare. Extreme fear can neither fight nor fly. Extreme fear. It's a numbing type of feeling, isn't it? It can really stunt anything that you feel like doing if you're in extreme fear. How about the next one? Some of you may know this one. Now, I'm not going to try to do the voice, okay? So I know you were looking forward to it, but there's no way I can pull that one off. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Yoda. So 3 different sources talking about fear, and the list would go on and on. How about in the news? Fear sells, doesn't it? Ooh, something bad happened. I better click and find out. You've heard it said, if it bleeds, it leads. It's a popular thing that goes around. Fear sells newspapers. If you can get people worried, they're going to want to find out, is there a solution? And so, unfortunately, that has gotten through the roof with social media as well. A lot of conversations go in directions they wouldn't in person, but on the internet, for some reason, there's this extra feeling of comfort that I'm going to go extra negative on a conversation. And so we have to be mindful of that. The question becomes, where does fear come from? I don't know if people stop and think about that. Everybody knows it's there. They see it there every day. They see it on the news. They see it if they're in a hotel and the lobby has a TV on. It's probably got a news channel on talking about some disaster on the other side of the world, but you are hooked. What just happened? I don't know any of those people, but it's got my heart rate going up a little bit. If we go to the Bible, isn't it interesting? We could find something out about it in there. So in Genesis, we learn right in the beginning of our Bible, in chapter 2, we learn what was the original state. What was the relationship like with Adam and Eve and God? They walked with God. Not afraid of him. Not ashamed. They knew his sound. They could recognize him. This intimacy with God, the original intent. What happens between then and when we read Genesis 3:10 and we find out the first account of Adam saying he was afraid of God? They knew they had done wrong. What is that wrong? It's a churchy word. They sinned. They acted on what the serpent told them they could do, even though God told them they shouldn't. And they acted on it and they sinned. The first sin encountered immediately has the result of him being afraid. So we know where the first account of somebody being afraid started. Any other thoughts on that before we move on from there? Hmm. That's a great point Ted made. I don't know if anybody heard that. He referenced 9/11, the attack, and the Twin Towers going down, and all the rubble that was left for everybody to see all over the news and learn day in and day out about the loss and the fear that everybody felt in common with one another. And the result was more attendance in churches. We're going to hold on to that thought. I mean, that's going to continue on through our discussion tonight. This idea that it's a thing that affects everyone, not just people inside of a church. Everybody out there recognizes that fear exists and it affects everybody. So, what do we fear? It's a short list, There may be some things on there that you relate with, and there may be some that don't show up. But I thought I'd pull up a few topics here. The first one is the what ifs, the uncertainty. What if I don't get that job? What if I lose that job? What if we run out of money? What if the doctor says, fill in the blank? How about loss? Fearful of losing someone? Fearful of losing something? Failure? Anybody been afraid of failure? Absolutely. How about embarrassment? We talked in the beginning, one of the definitions was putting off doing something. What if you're afraid of being embarrassed? What if you're afraid of being ridiculed? Which those can be kind of tied together. We talked about health concerns. Don't want to go to the doctor. I'm afraid of what I'll find out. That's near and dear to me. I've got relatives that are that way. Political tension. I mean, you can find that every day these days. And then financial instability. Everybody can talk about the economy, the job market. Times are tough. They keep printing money. Probably heard these conversations. If you haven't yet, they're coming. You can catch these types of things said in almost everyday conversations with people. So where do we go when we are afraid? Just going back to this feeling of instability, this feeling of chaos, this feeling of just destruction on the inside. You don't have a control. You can't get a grip. When you're feeling that way, where do you go? You pray. We had a great lesson from Dan last week on prayer, right? I don't know if that's something that's an immediate response for everybody. Sometimes it's not for me. Sometimes it takes a little bit. Maybe that's a pride thing. I don't know. Probably is. But go immediately to prayer. Go to God. Tell him what's going on. Give it to him. This is a question that I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. This is a question that's great to ask other people. Oh boy. We'll do our best here. We go to whom we trust, right? For some people, it can be a relative that they'll say is their rock, somebody that will listen, which is great. But ultimately, we go to God. We have examples all over the Bible of this. Wonderful things to read that come out of Psalms, like here, when I'm afraid, I put my trust in you, in God whose word I praise, in God who I trust. I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? Just saying those words out loud have strength. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful point. Absolutely. Part of my efforts tonight will be to show scriptures, and it will not be an exhaustive list. If there are ones that come to mind to you that I don't have up here, let me know. We can read them out. But the idea is, if you don't have scriptures that come to your mind, do something about that. Have some ready to go in times of trouble that you lean on. Or go seek out new ones as well. But it's good to have ones, because also, we're going to learn later, they may come in handy when it's not you that's going through the hard time too. Another one is Proverbs chapter 3. You may be familiar with this one. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. We can read through that one pretty fast, and it sounds amazing, but it is hard to accept. Lean not on your own understanding. That's a deep concept, isn't it? Because we can get in our own ways. This one got cut off, so we might have to go to this one. Does anybody, well, I'll pull it up because I got the microphone. So John chapter 14. Actually, we can read it all right there. John chapter 14, Jesus says, "Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me." Hold on to this thought of trust as we move on here. Oof, that's all right. Okay, so anybody use the Bible app? And YouVersion is the company that puts it out. And they sent out an email, a review of 2025. And it said the most engaged scripture for 2025 globally comes from Isaiah 41:10. Read what this says. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand." What a wonderful scripture to read if you're in a time that we're describing. So what does that say if that was the scripture of 2025? There's a lot of anxiety in the world. A lot of people seeking words to give them peace, to give them comfort. So, we talked about trust, didn't we? Go to someone you trust. Well, how about faith? Why don't we talk about what faith is? If you were to do the same exercise, Grok, Google, ChatGPT, what's faith? It would come up with something like this: complete trust or confidence in someone or something. We go to Hebrews chapter 11 and read, it says, "Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." When you think of faith, what comes to mind? Abraham, I hear trust, belief. This next slide is kind of bold. Bear with me. Would you agree with that? Myron says the demons believe. Reading my notes. Faith requires what Ted was just talking about, the willingness to act, the willingness to follow through with what you believe in. And James is a wonderful place to go to. Why don't we go there? James chapter 2. Start in verse 19. Actually, we can back up to verse 18. It says, "But someone will say," back to 17. "So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, 'You have faith, and I have works. So show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one, you do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. Do you want to be shown, you foolish person, the faith apart from works is useless? Was not Abraham, our father, justified by works when he offered up his son Isaac on the altar? You see that faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works." Goes on to say, "And the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, and it was continued to him as righteousness, and he called a friend of God. You see, that person is justified by works and not by faith alone." This concept of believing is just simply an acknowledgement of who God is, of who Jesus is. And that's what the demons even do. If you think about it, when Jesus interacted with someone that was demon-possessed, what was the response from the demons when he walked up to them? Anybody remember any of those? They were afraid? Of course. Why were they afraid? They knew who he was and his power. It's exactly what this is talking about. They knew who he was. They believed who he was because they knew what was about to happen. Hey, just put me into those pigs. I know what you're capable of. So faith takes it further. How about James chapter 1? In verse 22. It says, "But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man who looks intently at his natural face in the mirror, for he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks intently looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing." When you first read it, it kind of sounds silly. Like, how do you forget what you look like? But it happens. So this idea of not just hearing. We're going to read this next one, and then I'll open it up if anybody has any thoughts here. Luke chapter 6. This is going to be a familiar story, I'm sure, to most. A fun song as a child, and then later you read it again, you say, that hits a little different now. Luke chapter 6, verse 46. I'll just read this section here for us. It says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you what he is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. And when a flood arose, the stream broke against that house and could not shake it because it had been well built. But the one who hears and does not do them is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. When the stream broke against it, immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. And the rains came down. It's a fun song, and then you read it later and you say, ooh. Splat. The moral of the story is, don't just read it, do it. That's a good analogy. I hadn't heard that before. So, I don't know if everybody heard that. It's like a bridge across a big ravine. And they say, well, I believe this bridge is going to be able to hold me. He says, well, you can believe it all you want, but only until you get on it will you really find out. That's what Christianity is all about. That's right. Anybody else have any thoughts on these verses? Something that sticks out to me a lot is in that James chapter 1 where it talks about deceiving ourselves. I can relate with that, where I can deceive myself. We're pretty good at rationalizing. How about this statement? Faith is not temporary. We'll go on to read in Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 23 says, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. We are to hold fast. Matthew 13, familiar story as well, being the rocky ground. You know what, let's go read that one. I think that one's, rather than talking about it, it's going to be better to read it. Matthew 13. Another story read as a child, I read again, and it hits differently when I'm older. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. That is what is sown along the path. As for what was sown on the rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while, and when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. Why would Jesus bring this up? It's really well put. You could say It's an education on the people that you might interact with whenever you're sharing the gospel. They may react in this way, so don't be surprised if you have some that fall into this category. But it's also a warning, too, isn't it? Saying, this can happen to you. So when tribulations come, don't be the rocky ground. Hmm. Yeah, omission or avoiding. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Feed. Sounds like a good study. And of course, in 1 Timothy, we learn that we have the capability of shipwrecking our own faith. Talk about accountability. You can do it to yourself. You can't talk about faith without bringing up Hebrews 11:6. Because what is the intent? Where did we start in Genesis chapter 2? The relationship with God. That should be our intent, is to please God. So we read in 11:6, I have it up here to read. It says, without faith, sometimes you can please God. Whoops, just kidding. It's impossible to please God without faith. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. Would that fall in line with everything we've been talking about so far tonight? We learned that demons believe. Are they pleasing God? They're not seeking him. They're not.
God had to seek them after the fall. Had a good relationship beforehand, but then God had to seek them. There was no evidence that Adam and Eve were seeking God after they had committed this sin. And all of us have to continually, agonizingly seek him. It's an active word. It's really, really go after him. It's not passive. I promise I didn't see it.
That's really uncanny. That's awesome. So, again, continuing in Hebrews 11, you learn about these, people call it the Hall of Faith, heroes of faith. You get this list of incredible people, the circumstances they found themselves in, and then fill in the blank. Abel offered. Enoch pleased God. Noah constructed the ark. Abraham went when God asked him to. He offered Isaac when he was asked to. Sarah considered him faithful, resulted in a son. Isaac invoked future blessings. Joseph blessed his sons, gave directions on what was to happen in the future. Moses left Egypt. He kept the Passover, crossed the Red Sea, and the list goes on and on. What is the common theme? Action. They didn't say, "No, I believe, God, you'll be there for me," and then just left it there. 1 Timothy 1:7, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. That's a fun study, just to look into this verse and those three words together in one sentence. If somebody has those three things, they would be unstoppable. If you think about somebody that has power and you actually respect them, it's probably because they have self-control with it and they're a loving person. The point is, we are called to not be passive. It's a spirit of power, of love and self-control. How about this one out of 1 John? We're going to have a couple out of here. Talking about love. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, for fear has to do with punishment. And whoever fears has not been perfected in love. I'm going to click ahead because we only have so much time left. 1 John 5:4. This is one that's good to have in the back pocket to go back to. And you also might start singing some lyrics to a hymn as you read it. For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. If you think about it, what happens when we get in the waters? We get baptized, new person, and it just begins. Your journey just began. So faith is the victory that gets you to overcome the world. Now we're coming back to where we started. And that is, everybody acknowledges that fear exists. But what do they do with it? And that can be an opportunity in disguise when we talk to people. Fear is relatable. There's those times in your life that you've kind of put back, not fun ones to look at, maybe kind of grayish in your mind, but they may be powerful to share with someone else because it's a way to share about your faith. How'd you get through it? Share those experiences. Tell your story. You might be surprised that people want to hear it in those times. In times of fear, people are seeking. They're looking for stability. Just like when we talked about the 9/11 tragedy. We had the Charlie Kirk assassination. Same type of situation. Lots of attendance in churches. People said, whoa, things just got more real to me somehow. If that's capable, I don't know what I trust in right now. And they show up at the doorsteps of a church, and they're hoping to find some truth, some comfort, some solace, some people to rally with. And I hope that's us. And the idea is we can be those people that show them where to look. And so, do not fear, or phrases like that, fear not, over 300 times in the Bible. It is that reminder that God knows we need, just like we read in James, where we will forget what we even look like. So, a reminder is always a good thing when it comes to not being fearful or afraid or having anxiety or worry. Because it can hit you when you least expect it. Really powerful words. I just put some verses on here for reference. I think they'll send this out in an email at some point. Don't worry about writing them down right now. And this isn't exhaustive, obviously. But just to give some examples of things that we can have ready to go. For yourself, and if it does come up, you can say, you know what? I was just reading this the other day. I thought it might be helpful for you too. It's nice to know that the creator of the universe, of this world, of us, has these things to tell us. Because a lot of those people that are even looking at that Isaiah 41:10 we saw don't really understand where it comes from, how it relates to the Bible story, and to Jesus ultimately.
Comforting, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, and then, if you do this and you overcome, you'll inherit. But then he transitions, and he says, but the cowardly and the unbelieving. And then he lists a bunch of people we normally think of as going to perdition. But we don't normally think of people that are cowardly. They're not hurting anybody, that's what we think. But from God's perspective, if you're unbelieving and you're cowardly, you've allowed these fears to overcome you, as opposed to you, by faith, overcoming those fears, then you'll actually end up separated from God. It's awful.
That is an awful situation to be in. Anybody have any thoughts? This is my last slide, so we have a couple of minutes here. This idea of overcoming fear, sharing with others? Anybody have any situations they've been in where this has been effective, where somebody related with you or you happened to relate with somebody and it worked out? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a great thought. So he brought up the distinction on different type of fear. The reverence we see in Proverbs chapter 1, beginning of understanding. It's the beginning. The fear of God is the beginning of understanding. There's reverence of who he is. What he was just talking about, Colton, there on how awesome God is and this love for God, this other side of fear. Great point. Well, I appreciate your thoughts this evening. We'll continue on, Lord willing, with Mark to finish out the series on evangelism. I hope this has been fruitful this evening, and why don't we close out with a prayer?